And that's what our mission is really what a disciple is all about. It's to love Jesus, become like Jesus, and to share Jesus. This is why we do everything that we do, is because this is what we believe a disciple is loving Jesus, becoming like Jesus, and to share Jesus. And to embrace being a disciple is to accept our mission to join Jesus in being the hope of the world. It's to embrace Jesus' mission to be the hope of the world to the people where in your world, where you live, where you work, where you learn, where you play. See, the local church is Jesus' representation to the community that we live. And that is hope in darkness. See, the local church, I believe, and this is the teaching big idea that I hope that you grab a hold of and let it sink in and pray, God, let me understand this. See, the local church is the hope of the world as we follow Jesus, by loving Jesus, becoming like Jesus, and sharing Jesus. But we also have a vision that we want to share, and you've heard this before, and we want to revisit this. And the reason we want to revisit this is because it's a reminder of what God, we believe, wants to do through us. And on your notes, you have that little graph and that picture there. And I want you to, at the top of your notes, I want you to write these words, 10 to 10K. And so in this, by 2030, we want to have influenced 10,000 people who are living out an expression of loving Jesus, becoming like Jesus, and sharing Jesus. What this does not mean is we're going to be a church that's big. But what this does mean is we want to be a church who has a big impact. Because Jesus is the Savior and the living God. And what we know about who He is should determine our efforts to be on mission with Him. And I believe, and we believe, that God will do immeasurably more through a church who is focused on in following Jesus. God will do immeasurably more through our lives as we surrender to Him. And we want to do this. See, we want to do whatever we can with whatever we have to reach whomever we can to trust in and follow Jesus, because He is the Savior of the world. That there are 4 what we call mid-ground objectives that we have. And this is what fills those 4 blanks. The first is this, is we want to grow by 150 families. And I want you to understand me. I say we want to grow by 150 families. We're going to reach new families. But sometimes we reach families and other families move off, but we want to create a place where we want to grow in our community here, in our fellowship here. We want to grow by 150 families. Families that are single people and they're connected to family, and they're going to become a part of our church family. Families who have single parents who need a church family. We want to grow by that. We want to grow by some people who are going to come and they're going to move in this area, they're going to retire. Many of you are military families and you got friends that are going to come later and they're going to be a part of a community. We want to make room and space for them. We want to grow. Why? Because people need a relationship with Jesus, and families, we want to build stronger families, and so we want to increase our capacity to reach more families. Is we want to plant a campus, we want to plant 2 international church plants, and we want to plant 1 church, 1 local church. And I am so grateful for our leadership here at Westside Leavenworth, because since our inception, if you didn't know, we began as a church in 2016 in January. And since that time, we've taken 10% of what is given on a monthly basis, and we've been setting it aside. Every month, we take 10% of what the generosity of all of us together, we set it aside specifically for church planting. We set it aside specifically for church planting. Why? Because we believe the local church is the hope of the world as we follow Jesus by loving Jesus, becoming like Jesus, and sharing Jesus. And we want to help start churches. And to start churches, you need resources. Or at the January this year, we sent 35 people off to start a church, a local church in downtown Leavenworth, as a different, unique expression of the local church, as they are meeting in downtown Leavenworth to reach people in that area that they'll never darken the doors. And we were able to send them off with $75,000. Because of what your generosity, and because of the commitment of our church leadership team, we're not only able to do that this year, but we were able to give $25,000 to local church planting in the Kansas City metro area. It's amazing what God has been doing. Why? Because we see the local church as the hope of the world, not just here, but also globally. And I want to share with you 2 different areas of the world where we have local church planting and action, and God is doing amazing things beyond us. It's not even because of us. And we're a small part of what God has already been doing over there. And in South Africa, we have been partnering, and we want to help in our global efforts. We align our crosshairs to where they're reaching spiritual orphans, people far from God, and they're also reaching physical orphans. And on the left is one of our 3 church planters who we are supporting in South Africa. And this church planter right here, he is actually a church plant coach, so he has church plants coaches. He's coaching church planters right now. So we're not just empowering somebody, we're empowering a church planting coach. We're empowering the multiplication of churches in South Africa in the Eastern Cape. And they're also reaching physical orphans. Many of the kids that you see pictured there don't have a mom or a dad. And they come and they get food every day, and it's grown by these church planters in their churches, in their gardens, in the back of their yard, and they grow this food up. And what you give helps make that possible. And I want to thank you for your generosity. And I also want to celebrate what God is doing in Uganda. And I want to celebrate Gerald and his church, Bethel. This church was already established, and we started partnering with Gerald because he's reaching physical orphans, and he's also making disciples. Specifically, he's training up church planters. And he is reaching spiritual orphans. And the picture that you see right now is of Gerald and his wife bookending a lady who came to Christ 3 weeks ago, and she's a Muslim. God is on the move. Why? Because Jesus is the Son of the living God, and he's the Savior of the world. This is the mission he's calling us to. And we're going to empower this. And we wanted to empower Gerald. They and their church have been in a temporary structure, and they're building a bigger temporary structure as they grow and they begin to disciple and care for more people. And they don't have a roof. They couldn't finish their roof. So we found out it cost just a simple $1,000, and it was simple for us to say yes to this. And because of your generosity, we gave $1,000 to help Gerald finish the roof and help Bethel Church finish the roof. Thank you so much for your generosity in doing this, because we want to plant churches.